Congressman Chaka Fattah, Democrat from Pennsylvania, and MSNBC's Abby Huntsman. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you for having me. I just left a meeting with the president.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You just came from the White House meeting with the House Democrats, and let me ask you about that meeting and about reports the GOP is getting isolated. What is the sense from Democrats on where this is going?
Well, look, we think that the Republicans have went down the wrong road, and it's a dead end. And at some point, rather than more aggressively prosecuting their way down that road to the dead end, they need to turn around. And what the president said was that, you know, he is not going to compromise, as I said 2 weeks ago when I was on your show, on the issues at hand. That is that the government has to run in its normal operation, and the government has to pay its bills. Now, in terms of a fair negotiations with the other party on things that we're concerned about and things that they're concerned about, we can have those negotiations. But he's not willing to have our nation held hostage, and he was very clear about that. But I think he's got an outstretched arm and hand to Speaker Boehner that, look, let's get back to regular order. Let's have the government function. Let's pay our bills, and then let's sit down and talk through whatever the concerns of the Republican Party may be.
Well, Congressman, as much as you can, take us inside the White House meeting. What happened in the meeting that you can share with us?
Well, I can share this. You know, the president said that he's always been amazed that you had so many climate deniers, but now you got default deniers. You got people running around saying that if the government doesn't pay its bills, if the full faith and credit of the United States, which has always been the gold standard in the world, is just pushed aside, it won't have any effect. And he says this is the most radical, extremist notion that we could be a deadbeat nation, and somehow it's not going to affect our markets and our economy. And it's the most dangerous language that we really heard from people promulgated from the other side, members who should know much better about this.
You know, Abby, the fact of the matter is when you hear that they are default deniers, and you hear it in the context of climate control deniers. I mean, that's pretty scary that we have people that will make a decision on whether or not we deal with the debt limit that really are in denial that default in this regard would have the impact that it in fact will have.
It's incredibly scary, and it's why we're in this position right now. I mean, you can throw out this anti-government rhetoric. That's all fine and well until you see what actually happens.
Exactly.
When you can't pay the bills. I mean, when you see you can't pay for families of U.S. soldiers that lost their life in Afghanistan, you can't pay for research at the CDC to track the flu that affects 24,000 people a year. You can't, you know, when it comes to doing research, for example, I mean, all of that's been cut off. These American lives are on the line. You have 2 million people that aren't getting paid. They aren't sure when they're going to get paid again. I mean, and they rely on this for daily expenses, whether it's mortgages, whether it's going to the store to buy food for their family.
Many survive check to check.
Yeah.
But you know, Congressman, Abby mentioned these military families. I mean, we're talking about people that died protecting Americans, died in the service of this country. Listen to what the president said when he was asked about military families.
What I'd say to them is actually that's gotten solved today. I just said administratively, I'm not going to wait for Congress. And I asked Chuck Hagel, Secretary of Defense, to go ahead and fix it, and it's going to get fixed today.
And what do you say to those folks? Sorry?
No, what I say to them is we should have never been there in the first place. What happened was that the theory that we should shut down the government as a negotiation tactic should never have been done in the first place. And it does a disservice to all the men and women in uniform and all those veterans who sacrificed for our freedom.
I mean, Congressman, we should have never been there in the first place, the president says. Can you imagine your child, my child, dying in the service of this country, and we're told we cannot help you because we want to stop a law that was already passed? I mean, can you imagine the pain and anguish that must cause people who did nothing but what was right for this country?
Well, that shows you the recklessness of this. And there's all this talk about who's to blame. There are three legs to this stool: House, Senate, President. The House is the one leg that says we won't keep the government open. The Senate has said we'll pass a clean CR or a government operating bill.
Right.
The president said he will sign a government operating bill. The House says no, unless you give us all of our demands, we won't allow the government to function. And not only did this disgraceful thing happen today, but all of the inspections from plant catastrophes around the country, chemical safety plant inspections had to stop. Inspections of our airplanes at the maintenance terminals at airports have had to stop. We've had research going on paid for by the National Science Foundation, which has to be put on hold and will wipe out a year's worth of work of some of the world's best scientists because of this nonsense, all to attempt to have us deny affordable care, which never was going to happen. This is a dead-end road. They were never going to get the president to retreat or equivocate, and now they seem to, based on Paul Ryan today, seem to have admitted that, well, they need to get back to some more normal discussions about what political parties want. Democrats want a lot of things. We want immigration. We want background checks. You know, we want more funding for universal child care and education. So let's have a discussion about that, but not at the threat of cutting and closing down our government.
Abby, this Times article about the isolation of the GOP. Now some of their own business allies in the business community, major players, are calling on them to end this shutdown immediately. What is your view of that, and will this bring them toward any level of rational behavior here?
That is a great question. I wish I could answer that, and I wish the answer was yes. It's really no surprise that the American people see dysfunction in Washington as a bigger problem today than the economy. I mean, that is where we're at. The biggest issue for Republicans is there's no authority. You know, we know that Speaker Boehner has not been able to really exert any sort of leadership for a long time now. So they're in a position now where the Tea Partiers, as we know, they're not likely to budge on this. What it's going to take is Speaker Boehner to exert some of that leadership. I don't know that's going to happen in the near future. I don't see it happening, but it's going to have to happen. You see folks like Senator McCain, rational voices who are trying to make some sense of these guys, saying, look, we know how this is going to end. We see the writing on the wall here. It's time to throw in the towel. Unless you're affecting the outcome of their election of these members in the House in 2014, they're not willing to listen. They don't really care what anyone has to say.
No, well, you can tell how bad it is when I'm saying John McCain is rational, but at least in this point he is. Congressman Chaka Fattah and Abby Huntsman, thank you both for your time.